Show.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining the Ask Us Anything for ClassIT Plus and classification. We're just going to give everybody a minute to join. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Sorry we're joining about a minute late. So ClassIT Plus has redundancy, but Holly unfortunately does not. And she lost electricity about a minute before, so she had to go on her backup power. But I think you have power now, it looks like. So we'll go ahead and get started. So this is Ask Us Anything. And we're going to go through a couple things, but then make sure majority of time is dedicated to answering any questions about the NMFC changes, the lookup tool and Class IT Plus. So I'm Joe Orr, COO at NMFTA, and really focused on ClassIT Plus and the classification changes. And I've got Holly and Keith with me, so I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Holly?
Hey everyone, sorry about the delay. I'm Holly Taylor. I'm Director of Product here at NMFTA.
And I'm Keith Peterson. I'm Director of Operations at NMFTA.
All right, and some important dates, and I did want to reiterate because we are getting some questions on these, and so some of these are past dates, but so on April 21st, the lookup tool became available, and just the other day, we surpassed 10,000 registered users on the lookup tool, and I've mentioned it before in previous sessions. Our goal was 3,500, and so it's a free tool that we made available. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but we're really excited that people are registering and using this tool to really look at what the changes are for the 2025-1. We'll talk more about that tool. On May the 20th, the ClassIT Plus API sandbox testing with data non-production became available. And then on July 15th, that's when ClassIT Plus gets released. Now, keep in mind, when we say ClassIT Plus gets released, that's both the UI, but it's also the API. And I think, even today, we had a couple customers say, well, what if I want to use, will the old ClassIT have the 2025-1 data? And the answer is no. So if you're using the old API, if you're using the old ClassIT, but especially if you're utilizing the old API, you will not get 2025-1 data. So if you're a customer that works with a TMS, please make sure that your TMS is utilizing the new APIs. If they're not utilizing the new APIs, they're not going to get the 2025-1 data. So they need to make sure they're working with NMFTA to utilize those new APIs in order to take advantage of the 2025-1 data. So they should probably already be in our sandbox and working with us. And then July 19th, the NMFC data changes go into effect. And so those are the timelines. But again, the biggest one, I think as we're working with folks is to make sure that those API, that the API and the integration users are aware that they have to cut over to that new API. All right. Holly, do you want to talk about some of the key resources that we have available?
Yeah, absolutely. So To get updates and to just see an overview of all the NMFC data changes coming and going into effect on July 19th, please go to, nmfcchanges.com. And then we have that NMFC Item Lookup Tool that Joe just discussed, and that is available at getclassification.com. And then for ClassIT Plus, we have a bunch of information as well. And you can also subscribe to updates, and that is at classitplus.com. And I'm actually, Joe, if you don't mind, we're getting ready for the live Q&A, but I think I'm going to leave it on this slide with all the resource information, just so people can keep seeing that if they want to jot that down. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. And Holly, did you want to do anything other than, did you want to jump into QA, or did you want to go ahead and show some things before we jumped into the Q&A?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually wanted to give just a little recap. We are just wrapping up our beta program for the UI side, the web application side. And, we've had really good feedback. We've had over 100 beta participants, individual users on our beta site testing ClassIT Plus. We've received a lot of feedback, some of it good, some of it not so good, which has been fantastic. So I really want to just highlight some of the key efforts that have gone into making sure that ClassIT Plus is ready for production. And I would say the area that was focused on the most was our search feature. And so I can give a quick demo in a second if we'd like. We received a lot of feedback on what went well, what maybe some usability issues or little bugs, and that became our primary focus. And we had some really quick turnaround on some of the issues we were having, so our beta participants could get in there and they could retest and make sure everything was working the way that they expected it to be. We have a beta program going on right now as well for the API, and we've received some great feedback regarding that as well. So just wanted to kind of say a universal thanks to everyone who participated and letting everyone know that we have made our beta efforts really the focal point over the last, I would say 6 weeks. As we ramp up to production, our goal is to make sure that ClassIT Plus is ready, and it has been thoroughly tested out there in the wild with our beta participants. So.
Okay. All right. And did you want to go ahead and show those off, or did you want to wait till the end? All right.
So I'm going to I'm going to share my screen here in a minute. And when I share my screen, you might end up having 2 tabs on your side. So you may have to select a different tab in order to see the demo. And I'm going to let you know when I'm showing the demo.
Yeah, one will say Aaron Carter's screen, one will show Holly Taylor's screen. You may have to, at the top, click on Holly Taylor's screen if Zoom doesn't click over automatically for you.
So Joe, Keith, you guys are both seeing the ClassIT Plus site. Perfect. So if you've clicked on the Holly Taylor tab, then you're going to see the ClassIT Plus site. So this is what we call, our landing page, our dashboard. Really, this is the main focal area. The minute you log into ClassIT Plus, this is where you're going to go. And this highlights the search feature, just like I was talking about. Search is our main feature here, but on the dashboard, we do have these tiles that are customizable and can be easily organized or removed. You see how the screen refreshes in the background, and I can, slide things around to reorganize them. This customization is unique to the person who is logged in, so that's fantastic. But one of the things I really want to highlight about these tiles is these tiles are, I like to say that they're in support of search. ClassIT Plus, the main focus is search. We really want to give you that ability to find the information you need as quickly as possible. And each one of these features gives you another avenue to do that. So if you end up having a favorite, which I can explain more in a minute, or you want to look at your search history, or even your comments. All of these tiles, all of these features give you that ability to find something very quickly. So these features are an assistant to that main search feature. But this main search feature here, you can see it's quite simple to get to. We can just like start typing, and as I start typing, I'm going to start seeing suggestions, and those suggestions will pop up, and I can click on that suggestion and I'll be taking directly to that suggestion. Your search results are here, and this is what we call the default search. You're going to see a single result like this when you click on that suggestion, or if you search for an item number specifically. If you search for a keyword or an or only know a couple numbers in that item number, we're actually going to give you detailed results, which I can show you more in a minute. But once you get to your search results, you can see here that it's a little truncated, you know. Well, what we did is we just want to focus on the results up to that generic heading level. So you're always going to see the generic header that your results belong to, and then you'll see your results. If you want to see more information, you simply click see more, and it opens up, and then it becomes scrollable. And then you can see the whole way up to the top of that generic header again. And you can see how my, my cursor, every time I hover over a line, it becomes highlighted in that gray so that I can follow it the whole way over to really see that class. And then as you continue to scroll down, you'll see here, this is still green because the green indicates that it was my initial search result. I can click on the item number to open that item number's information in its own dialog box, so then I can easily print or email it. You can see here, I can favorite. I also have the ability to access the calculator or the supplement itself. But let's go back to the main search results, because those same options are available on from the more options icon. So I can favorite this. And what does that mean? We all know what it means to favorite something. It just means that this is an item I like to search for a lot. So when I go back to my dashboard, it's going to be listed in my favorites, which means it's easy to find. I can also take this directly to the calculator. I can also make a comment. So if I wanted to make a comment on this item, this is a test. I'm just going to do something really quick here. Now I have this comment will always be affiliated with this item. And it, depending on how my organization is set up, I can even share that comment with other people within my company. This is really useful when you have specific item numbers that are unique to specific accounts or, you know, specific customers. You can really leverage those notes, those comments quite nicely. Something else that's really cool with our search feature is this calculator. So our calculators are pretty standard, lets you calculate your density. But because I clicked on the calculator from search results, you can see here that that information has been preloaded into the calculator so I can reference it as I'm working on my calculations. Now, at this time, we're not going to automatically tell you your class based on the results from the calculation. You will go through the calculator and you'll get your final calculations, and then you'll use those calculations to determine your class by using this reference right here. And then if I go back to search, and let's say I do a keyword search, let's do lumber, and then I hit detailed search. This is the detailed search, and this is going to give you that full list of everywhere lumber is mentioned, and then it allows you to click on the different items and see more information. And again, the search results panel on the right is very similar, pretty much exactly the same, what we just looked at, where you can see more information and scroll up. You can see the information below it and then continue to scroll down. So let's take a quick look at favorites. As you notice, I did favorite that one item. This is where my favorites live. And you'll notice here that some of our favorites, some of these tiles have a unique color for the background. Red means that it was recently canceled on the latest supplement. And this tan color means that it has been amended or changed. So this is really useful when you're working with items that repeatedly, you can easily see what's changed or what's new. And speaking of the what's new, it takes you to the what's new page, which is where each of the items will be listed with a description of, hey, that was created, this has been changed. Again, this is all just sample data. I apologize if you can hear my dog today, she's a little barky. And you can also see things that have been canceled. And if something was replaced when it was canceled, you can see the item that now replaces it. But I think that's enough for now. Do we want to jump over to some questions?
Yep. Thanks, Holly. Appreciate it. So a couple of the questions, Keith, if when new products come out, no matter what they are, and they and a customer's trying to determine how to properly classify it, how do they reach out to NMFTA and kind of explain that process and how that should work?
Sure. If you feel like your product or the product that you're shipping isn't covered in the classification process, you've got a couple of options here. Number one, you can use our interpretations team to, you can purchase an interpretation, fill out the form, which requires some information from you. And within 2 business days, they'll get back to you and provide a product number here, an item number that you should use, as well as the information. If you believe that's not correct, you can also request a research project. You can just send that. You can do that by sending an email to classifications@nmfta.org. And we'll take a look at it and open up a research project. So we may ask you for some additional information, and those do take time because that eventually turns into a proposal if we make it that far, and has to go through the process of becoming part of the NMFC. So no matter what kind of product it is, in the end, we end up doing research on these, making sure that we understand where it fits within classification system and how it should be classed appropriately.
And Keith, is there a charge for that? And what's the difference between a member and a non-member?
So for interpretations, there is a charge for it. For non-members, it's $50 per interpretation, and you can buy a pack of them for a discounted rate here. For members themselves, there is no charge for interpretations.
Okay.
As far as a research project, we don't have any charges for that here. So.
Okay. And the lookup tool, really the lookup tool, one of the questions has to do with the data for the lookup tool. It is based on 2025-1, and really what it does is it's reading a spreadsheet. And it's based on the 2025-1 changes. So Keith, the question has to do with the data that shows what the lookup tool matches up to. So how would someone go to our website to find that data?
So keep in mind the lookup tool, as Joe said, is you take a current item number, you can put it in. It tells you if there is a new item number, it tells you what it is, as well as what's going to be happening. It is not meant to be a replacement for ClassIT or ClassIT Plus here. So the best thing you can do is actually get a license with us if you want to look up the notes or the description about that item, and go ahead and look it up in ClassIT Plus. Here is what it'll be here. So.
And then what if somebody just wanted to look at 2025-1 and look at everything that's changing? Where would they find that?
Sure. There is a list out there. Go to NMFCchanges.com, and there's a link there to the disposition bulletin, and that's just a basic Excel spreadsheet. It doesn't have all the different notes or anything like that, what it's going to look like in the end. You really do, if you want to see that, that's really where you need to have a ClassIT license where you can get the full supplement on 2025-1, meaning this is what it's going to look like once it goes into effect on July 19th.
Thanks, Keith. And then Holly, can we can we show, and I'll ask you another question while you bring it up. Can we show the lookup tool? There's a couple questions related. I think we should show how you can enter multiple items in the lookup tool and maybe talk about what the notes mean. And then is there anywhere where we describe what the different notes mean? If not, maybe we can spend a few minutes going through. There's not a lot of variation what the different notes mean in the lookup tool itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just share my screen. And again, if you're still seeing the PowerPoint slide, please click on the tab that says Holly Taylor and you'll see the NMFC Item Lookup Tool. And here you can type in, so you can type in a single item number, or you can just type or copy and paste in multiple numbers, just separated by a comma, click search. You can also upload a comma separated file, and that will actually also perform the search. If you give me 1 second, let me see if I can find my file that I have for that. But it's pretty simple. And as you can see here from the results, it'll tell you this first item, 11,250, is not being changed. It's not part of the changes. 47500 is going from 11 subs to 13. And 25863 is being canceled and it'll be replaced by 25525. So
Keith, can you explain what it means when it says full density updated from 11 sub to 13 sub? What does that mean?
Sure. So in 2025-1, we've increased our full density scale from 11 to 13 subs by adding on 50 and 55 here. The other 11 subs on that scale, higher than 50 and 55, are not changing at all. And I think that was one item that was one question that was on there. So that 11 subscale really isn't changing as far as the class levels. We're just adding on 50 and 55, making it 13 subs. So when it says full density updated from 11 to 13 subs, that item was already marked as full density prior to the changes that are happening in 2025-1. So the only thing that's happening with that item itself is that we're changing it from the 11 sub full density scale to the 13 sub full density scale in the NMFC.
And I think everyone just saw how easy that was for me to upload this list. It's a massive list. Like you can see, I can't even, thousands of items I just uploaded and requested information for, and it returned it within seconds. So it's a very, very quick tool, and information will be returned to you within seconds.
So let's go through a couple of these, Holly. If you keep scrolling down, you
Yeah.
keep going. Cancel with reference, we talked about. So what's it mean, Keith, when it says handling stowability and liability indicator added?
Sure. So traditionally, well, up until now, the handling stowability and liability indicators would be a little bit hidden in the description and notes of the item number itself here. So you're thinking like greatest dimension or something like that, being in there, indicating that there is an handling stowability or liability indicate about that item itself here. So what we've done is we've taken those units and really just added, it actually looks like a hand that will be both in the book and on the website next to that item number, making it just really easy to spot if it does have handling stowability or liability issues. And that's important because we really didn't touch any of these items that have handling stowability or liability. We didn't make them full density or anything like that, but we did want to just notate them so that we could ourselves and everybody else using classification could easily identify these items in the future.
Okay, and then if you keep going down, I I think this is a whole docket. What does it mean when it says amended heading?
We just made a quick change to like the title or the name of the item number itself. So it just yeah, and that likely happened after the FCDC meeting. So
Okay, and full density, I think, is pretty self-explanatory.
sure. So that's actually, if you notice just below that where it says 12,710 is full density. But if you notice just below that, you see 12,710 in the second column there. That indicates that it's actually a new number. So a lot of items were condensed down into 12,710, and it's just saying that 12,710 is a full density item here. So it's on the 13 subscale.
Okay. And I think that that is, so cancel with no further application. What about that one?
So it was just an item or a note possibly that was out there that we decided just wasn't needed anymore as part of these changes. So we just canceled it fully, took it out of the book, and you won't see it anymore after July 19th.
Okay. All right. I'm going to switch subjects a little bit. Holly, will the ClassIT admin have access to ClassIT Plus prior to the 7/15 release date?
Realized I was mute. Yes, absolutely. So we're going to be opening up ClassIT Plus to the company admins in early July. You'll be getting an activation email whenever your user is set up, and you'll just follow. It's actually for Okta, so you'll just follow the steps in the email to activate your Okta login, and you'll get access. And since I'm still sharing, and I am technically a company admin, you'll actually go in and you'll see this option on your menu, company settings. So in here, you'll be able to manage your company details. You'll see and manage your subscription and you can actually add up to 5 company admins. So you can add additional company admins. You can manage your notifications. You can set up your company common, and you can also review your users. If you were transitioned over from ClassIT or filled out the transition form for FastClass, then your users will be transitioned over. You'll see here where it says license details. It means that we have 7 licenses assigned out of 15 licenses. So 7 of my 15. Now it says here that I have a total of 31. You can actually have more, technically they're called users. You can actually have more users, but it's that license count that matters. You have 7 out of these 31 users. I have 7 people that can log in and access ClassIT Plus right now. And I have 15 total, which means I have 8 more licenses that I could assign. And so
Okay.
you'll have almost 2 weeks to be able to prepare and review all your information.
Holly, can you bring up, I'm going to put you on the spot, an item that shows the handling stowing liability and the indicator with the hand?
Actually, it's a very good question, and unfortunately, I cannot do that today because we have not loaded in the 2025-1 data yet.
True. Okay.
And if you join us for the webinar that's at the end of the month, I believe on the 26th, I will be able to show it then.
All right. Yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, we can also show it in the documentation. I'm sure we may have a KB or something like that down or around that we can also show. Also, there is a request to show the spreadsheet that ClassIT or that the lookup tool utilizes. So if I'll go to other questions, but if we could bring that up and just kind of show what that spreadsheet looks like.
Okay.
We do have a request for that.
Okay.
All right. Let's see. The next question, I'll answer that. What is the PCF range for sub 12 and 13?
Oh, okay. All right, so 12 and 13. So hold on. Let me get to that. I've got it handy. I was actually just looking up I've got a picture of the handling, storability,
Okay.
liability indicator. So, all right. So for sub 12 on the 13 subscale, it's going to be 35, but less than 50. And then for sub 13, it's going to be 50 or greater. So 35, but less than 50 is class 55. And then 50 or greater is going to be class 50.
Okay. And then Holly, talk about if I've got ClassIT and ClassIT is launched, we're going to leave ClassIT up for a couple months, but the expectation is people will move over to ClassIT Plus. What happens to their it's the question is the membership, but what happens to their license? And can you talk about the licensing difference between ClassIT and ClassIT Plus, but also talk about how we're handling the licensing for the customers?
Yes. So this is a really big picture issue here. So we're all talking, this is about the transition to ClassIT Plus. So if you are a current ClassIT subscriber, you will automatically, let me correct that. If you're a current ClassIT subscriber with an active, subscription, meaning you have not expired, you will automatically transition over to ClassIT Plus. We will bring over all of your licenses. We will bring over all of your users and have those assigned to licenses. So if you have 5 licenses and 5 users, we're going to transition them over to ClassIT Plus. That transition is happening, later this month and at the beginning of July. And when that process is complete, each one of your users will get that Okta activation email so they can go in and set up their Okta login so that they can access ClassIT Plus. That is the only action that will actually be needed if you are a current ClassIT subscriber. Current ClassIT will not get the 2025-1 changes. So when those changes go into effect on July 19th, the only place that you can find that data is in ClassIT Plus. Now, we are leaving ClassIT up and running for several months. The sunset date is November 15th, 2025. And so on that date, all the ClassIT products will go away and your main source will become ClassIT Plus. Essentially, we are looking at not just the number of licenses and users that you're using now, but we'll also look at your current subscription. For example, if your current ClassIT subscription has 250 licenses on it, but you only have 150 assigned, we are bringing over all 250 licenses. You'll have 150 of the licenses will be assigned to the users that you have them currently assigned to. And then you'll have those other 100 licenses to assign to other users as needed.
Thanks, Holly. The next question I've got is, Holly, can you explain a little bit about is there a difference in licensing between the UI and the API? Then I'm also going to ask you to show the the rate limits that we have for the API calls.
Yes, there are licensing differences, and actually I'll share my screen again, and we can take a look at all of this information. So if you are interested in learning more about our licensing, you can go to our Help Center. So the Help Center is accessible from the Help Center link in our footer on NMFTA.org, ClassITplus.com, all of our websites. Now I have seen that some of you are having issues accessing NMFTA.org. We are aware that there is an outage right now, and which means I can also not get to the public. We have a site, Joe had asked earlier, to show the disposition bulletin. We have 2 versions of the disposition bulletin. One version is the public version, and it is available on NMFTA.org. And the other version of the disposition bulletin is currently available in ClassIT. So if you are a current ClassIT subscriber, if you go to the Documents tab, you can actually find the disposition bulletin. But I do apologize that we are actively working to restore nmfta.org. But in the meantime, the Help Center, again, the Help Center is accessible from all of our sites, including ClassIT Plus. And if you click on ClassIT Plus, you are actually brought to this landing page that contains all of the sections within the Help Centers. And this first one is about the API. So if you click on that, you can see all of these articles that you can review if you're interested in setting up and integrating with our API. And the rate limits I'll have to come back to that and show you that one in a minute, but we also have the licensing here. Our license agreements are right here. So if you want to review them before you purchase, you can just simply download and review. And the differences between the license agreements. The main difference between the license agreement is how you access and use the data. So if you are purchasing ClassITplus.com, ClassIT Plus as a web user, you are not absorbing or bringing in the data and storing it or using it anywhere. You are using our tool and everything is online. You access it through a browser. So that is a much different way in which you would leverage the ClassIT Plus API. The API will be used for you to make calls into our ClassIT Plus system, where you then pull the results, the search results, the data that you're looking for, which is all. So the main difference is the way that you pull in, store, and use the data. And because of that, the API license agreement is quite unique, and I encourage anyone who's interested to review it. And if you have any questions, to let us know. And the rate limits, I apologize, Joe, I can get to that in a second, but
Okay.
off the top of my head, our rate limits are hourly and monthly. And our hourly rate limits start at 150 calls an hour and go the whole way up to 150,000 calls. 1,500, my bad. They start at 150 and go up to 1,500 in an hour. For the monthly rate limits, it starts at 150,000 and goes up to 1.5 million. And so as you can tell, we have tiers. We have different tiers for the rate limits. And we will send you notifications when you start to approach the threshold for those rate limits. You'll get notified, and we're never going to turn you off. If you start to exceed those rate limits, that's when it becomes a conversation and really becomes a true partnership with us. And if we see that there's a pattern where you're exceeding your rate limits, we'll simply ask you to upgrade to the next tier.
Thanks, Holly. Keith, so the classification changes are a journey, and this is the first huge step in the journey. And so this is the first set of changes in July. When are the next set of changes this year? And we expect this to be completed over the next 2 or 3 years. But can you talk about when the next set of changes will be and what the next year looks like?
Yeah, you bet. So let's just keep in mind too that typically we actually do 3 dockets a year, honestly, and that's what we have been doing for a long time. And each of those dockets can be anywhere from 10 to 20 proposals on each. Now, this one, 2025-1, had 99 proposals on it, so it was a huge docket, I want to say. So we're only doing 2 dockets this year. The next one will be released right at the end of August. And we'll start taking, right when it's released, we'll start taking some feedback on it. Now, it's not going to be 99 proposals again. We made some big changes, and have to, and some of the things that are left over just require some more work and research on them here that we have to do yet. So the end of August is when we'll release it. We'll start taking feedback on it. We'll have the FCDC meeting at the end of September. And it's actually going to become effective the first weekend of December of this year, actually. So So if you go to get classification, NMFCchanges.com, you can actually sign up for updates, email updates from us regarding the timing and any kind of updates on that once it's released, and any other updates that are around it here. So.
Thanks, Keith. And Keith, talk about FAKs. Now, NMFTA doesn't deal with pricing. There's another question about pricing. We do the classification, purposely separate from pricing, but talk about FAKs because FAKs aren't mentioned in the NMFC, but talk about how this change may impact shippers and FAKs and what our stance is on that.
Sure. Really, FAKs are between shippers and carriers. And as you said, the NMFC does not, you won't find FAKs in the NMFC at all here. One thing to keep in mind when it comes to FAKs is as they're set up, carriers are of course going to want to lean towards having less risk, and there is some risk in FAKs, meaning hey, if something is taking up more room or is less dense, it may get a more favorable class as a result of the FAK. So I am sure as we go through this and opening more of this up to actually looking at the true density of handling units and working through and people getting used to full density on a lot more items than we've ever had in the past here, that FAKs will likely be looked at and may, as carriers start implementing these changes as well here. Now, if you've got an agreement with carrier, I've never heard a carrier say anything other than they're going to honor their agreements here. So don't want people to panic about that or anything like that. But you could see some changes to FAKs, basically.
Thanks, Keith. And then talk about how will the icons for handling stowability and liability be indicated on a BOL, or what's our recommendation? I know some of this gets into digitalization, but will there be a subclass number associated with each of these?
So really, there are no changes to the bill of lading requirements. The icon for handling stowability and liability is really there for informational purposes only. It is not a requirement to put it onto the bill of lading, either electronic or paper itself here. So in 2025-1, we're not making any changes to the bill of lading requirements here. They still remain that you just need a description on there. They like to have the item number on there, and then of course the dimensions as well here. Dimensions are going to be probably the most important thing on the bill of lading going forward here. So,
okay. One of the questions has to do with when making API calls, do you recommend caching? The answer is absolutely. Caching is something some people don't allow. Caching improves results. It improves performance. It helps you guys from a performance perspective, us from a performance perspective. It does help reduce duplicate API calls. So absolutely. And like Keith said, it changes twice a year. And so we recommend caching the call or caching those results and then once we make the changes to the docket, and then that's when you should go out to see if there are changes to avoid having that stale data.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, we only track calls that are like your search calls. We allow, I believe it's 3 different types of search calls, and those are the calls that we track. We're not going to calls to the calculator are not going to impact your rate limits. And because we do change the data twice a year, we will allow you to do pull in just those updates through a batch request. And that batch request will also not hit against your rate limits. So essentially we'll allow you to pull in the updates over the span of several calls instead of, hundreds. With this update of 2025-1, it would have been hundreds of calls. But instead, we're going to split the data up so that you can pull it down into several calls to make your updating a bit faster, and then you can cache it or store it locally so that you'll have those the updates.
When an NMFC number changes, does the freight description change also?
It definitely can. Generally, if we're doing an update to an item, there's likely a change. And if we're changing the number, there's likely a change in the description as well. I would say most of the changes on this particular docket, the description did change as part of really updating these item numbers, because we condensed down a lot of these items into a single item number for a generic heading, so that it had a longer list of what we call a viz listing, or the descriptive terms around that item, instead of having individual item numbers for each of those descriptions. We just made it one item number and made a full-scale density where it was applicable here. So short answer is yes, it can change the description. It doesn't always, but it does most of the time.
Okay. And then Keith, I don't know if what impact change to liability limit will be made with the changes?
So we didn't make any kind of changes around liability. In order to get the scale of these changes done here, we really kind of took the NMFC as it was written currently and trusted in the work that had been done to date, and moved items, condensed and moved items over to full scale density. So we didn't make any changes regarding liability limit or anything like that in 2025-1.
Okay. And I think a question we get a lot is as far as mixed, if there are mixed classes or mixed commodities on a pallet, how should they handle that, and how will that be addressed in the future?
So we didn't, there is a rule out there, Rule 640, that addresses mixed freight. Just due to the scale of this docket, we weren't able to really look at that rule and make sure that it made sense for us going forward here. So that is something that we're focusing on going forward, looking at these rules, making sure that they line up with our priorities of looking at density first here. So I would expect changes on some of these things in the future, but currently it's still handling it the same way. Now, keep in mind that a lot of freight that fits on a pallet, is boxed, fits on a pallet, is moving the full scale density. So in a sense, that helps somewhat, but we are going to be looking at the rules themselves here in those cases to make sure that they line up with our, like I said, our priorities here going forward.
Okay. There is a comment, Ollie, I sent it to you. I think it's a good idea about, with the lookup tool, just a legend or a key about what the different things mean. We could throw that out there on the website. And just so people know, it's a global outage that's happening. It looks like related to a web provider. So once that's back up, but we will take a look at that. I think that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, absolutely.
For BOL, you said dimensions are required. Can you elaborate? We don't see this in our industry. It's freight class that our carriers want to see. So talk about BOL and the BOL requirements and how it plays into the classification rules.
So that's true. Class is actually required, but you're going to want to start taking the dimensions of your handling units and paying attention to how the freight is prepared for shipment. And I say that because, looking at density, especially if you're putting a few boxes on a pallet, you have to keep in mind that the dimensions has to be taken from the most outward edges of that handling unit. So if you only have a couple of boxes on a 48 by 40 pallet, you know, your length and width are going to be 48 by 40. You know, and there may even be, depending on the carrier, some height minimums that they're going to put into place as well, because they're selling space on a trailer here. And that's what really it gets down to here, and making sure that, you know, that they're able to classify and rate according to how much space it's taking up on the trailer here. So, and what I'm really getting to is, you know, you want to make sure that you're not shipping air as much as possible here, and getting a much less dense class, you know, a higher class, because, you know, possibly you've got a lot of air on there because of the dimensions here. So.
And then, Keith, a couple questions have come in specifically about handling stowability and liability. Take a couple minutes and explain exactly what that is and why that got added. I know you
Sure.
touched on it again a little bit, but let's go into a little bit more detail.
So when we look and examine freight here, or items, commodities really, we characterize them based on handling, stowability, liability, and density. We used to have a lot more characteristics around freight, but we boiled it down to those 4 specific characteristics. So when you think of handling, stowability, or liability, you think of freight that's difficult to move, difficult to stow on a trailer, meaning it takes up a lot of room, and then also liability. You know, how prone to damage is it, or maybe even damaging other freight as well. So there are some commodities out there, you know, if you think something that is hazmat, for instance, likely we have indicators of all 3, handling, stowability, and liability on there. And when we indicate that, that means that we're doing, you know, we're making some adjustments to class accordingly to account for these different characteristics. Now, density is really just straightforward. Like I said, you calculate density, and that's really it here. So by putting this indicator in there, it just makes it that much more visible that this item is an item that has handling, stowability, or liability characteristics. And you'll know that, you know, the class has been adjusted accordingly here. So those, in the end, when we're all done, those items are the ones where you'll see modified density scales on them, either a single class or possibly multiple classes assigned to it, and it's not full scale density, basically.
Okay. And then one of the questions, it has to do with the 7/19 date. If carriers make mistakes, use the old class rates, you know, can carriers legally rebill the invoices? Is there a government agency to file complaints against carriers? So Keith and I will explain a little bit. Now, we participate a lot in panels about these changes, and what carriers are telling us is that, hey, as long as shippers are making an effort towards making and investigating these changes, if they make mistakes, the carriers are going to work with you, right? They're not going to they're going to help you with the changes. It's the shippers that just aren't making any effort that they're really going to say, hey, here's the rate. You know, not from a governmental perspective or a government agency perspective, but from a rate perspective. But they really, you know, it's in everyone's best interest to look at it. But it's not a quote unquote government agency that's enforcing it. Keith, what would you add to that?
You know, I would kind of go back as well to, you know, it's really a good chance to look at how you are preparing your your items for shipment here, and knowing how you do that here. Are you using up all the pallet? Are you shipping air? You know, is there a way to make this handling unit more dense here? And really talk to your carriers about these changes here, and get to know how they may affect you as well here. So it's important to really kind of pay attention, do your investigation into it here, and make sure you understand exactly what is changing.
Okay. And one of the questions, can I get via search the lookup tool the full list of results that Holly was getting earlier? I think Holly did probably what Keith and I had done is she looked at the docket and looked at all the items that were changing, and the performance test it just listed all those items in a comma delimited file, and that's what spit it out. So you guys can do the same thing if you look at the docket that's out there on NMFC changes. It lists all it will show all the items that are changing. You plug those into the tool and it will spit all those out for you. Keith, is the density now going to be determined by the weight and dimensions of a pallet?
Was the question now going to be determined by the weight dimensions of? So you know, the density, your dimension should it's always been a case where your dimensions should be taken from the outermost edges of your handling unit. So you know, even if it's on a pallet, if you have things that are sticking out beyond the pallet, you should go out to that length or width, right? So I gave the 48 by 40 example before, because if you only have a box or a couple of boxes on a pallet, all shrink wrapped, but that's the way you move it. I just wanted people to be aware that, you know, your dimension should be taken according to the width of the pallet, because that's actually what's taking up room on the trailer, basically. So.
And Keith, where would somebody go if they want to get an example of an electronic bill of lading?
An electronic bill lading?
Yeah, bill of lading. Like, so, and I'm using an electronic bill of lading because I want to push our standards a little bit. So I thought, well, where could someone go to see that?
Sure. If you go to NMFTA.org, there's a section that's called DSDC, Digital Standards Development Group. And by going there, you'll see links to actually get in and see our really both the PRD and the YAML itself for electronic bill lading, as well as preliminary freight charges. So it's all out there. It's open source for people to go and use here. And everybody's free to go in there. You will have to register just to go ahead and download it and get to those pages, but you know, it's out there for anybody to go and use.
All right, guys, we are out of time, but appreciate all the questions. Keith, Holly, as always, appreciate it. I think on the next slide, we've got we may have a couple dates, but
no more dates. They were in the beginning.
All right, we will do this again in a few weeks. We also have another one to talk about our beta. But thanks for all the questions, and we will do this again. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.